In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the OMAS Extra Lucens fountain pen with Extra Flessible Nib. I'll go over the specs, I will do a writing sample, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this pen coming up. So this is the OMAS Extra Lucens Paragon fountain pen. This is a recreation of the Extra Lucens. This came out in the 2000s, and this for me I think is one of the most beautiful pens ever made. This and the original Extra Lucens, just a wow. And you see this design, the Leonardo's now kind of look like this. And to be fair to Leonardo, there were a number of other manufacturers that made pens that look like this, but the OMAS is the best, I think the most beautiful, and certainly the most famous of these 12-sided pens. So in terms of the design, we have like a sort of cone point on the finial. It's flat on the bottom, 12 faceted sides. It tapers towards the end of the cap here, and we have an Italian roller clip. I think they say this is an onyx roller on this one, but just that classic Italian design that we've seen copied so many times. On the back of the cap, it is engraved OMAS Italy, and then we have 3 cap rings which fit into the facets very nicely. I mean, I can feel them if I run my finger over them, but it's very well executed. And then it goes down into like the cap material. This is all celluloid, by the way. The whole pen is, the cap and the body are all celluloid. There's a little lip at the end of the cap here. And the body has some translucency to it, whereas the cap is all sort of the black and brown Extra Lucens, whereas the body has a lot of clear celluloid in it with that black and brown. It reminds me very much of the this marble called Port Laurent Marron, or maybe it's just called Port Laurent, but it's a very rich marble, and celluloid gives this pen, an extra classy look to it. It is a piston filler. We have the piston knob here, and you can tell, it's an old style OMAS pen in that we have the pin securing the piston knob here. You can always tell that that's a celluloid OMAS if there's a pin in there. The plastic ones, they use a little bit different construction, so they don't have that pin holding the knob in place there. Now it's a threaded cap. The threading on this pen is not super smooth, to be honest, but it secures well, and it seals nicely, so I don't have any real problems with the function of it. The cap does have like a little liner in the very end of the cap there that just helps seal the pen, but it's very light in normal traditional OMAS fashion. The body, if we look a bit closer at the celluloid here, there's no engravings on this body, but you can just see some of that translucency in there, and you can see, here the ink kind of sloshing around and coming in contact directly with the celluloid, which is something you don't see, or I haven't seen at least, on any of the newer pens, Armando Simone Club or Leonardo. They always put a lining in there, which is, a good thing for protecting the material from interacting with the ink, but makes for a heavier pen, makes for something that I think is less elegant and less true to the original like we have here. This is just, classic OMAS construction here. Threading, and then we have a small grip section before it flares out. And then here we have the Extra Flessible Nib. This is a 14 karat gold flexible nib. There's an F for fine, because this was a fine, and then we have an ebonite feed. These nibs are very rare. They are desirable. However, I will say from my experience and reading the experiences of others, these nibs are pretty fussy. I had to send this one to John Madasha. He tuned the nib, he made it more flexible, and he made deeper grooves into the feed so that the nib would keep up better with the pen. So if you're getting one of these, just be aware it might require some nib work, but once you do that, you do have a very nice nib. Now, in terms of size and weight, looking at about 137, 138, looking at about 129. Posted, these do post, but not very far down, and I would just be very careful. I don't post this pen. I mean, there's just not really any point to it. It's kind of a precious item. This is about 130 or 178, so very, very long posted. But it's not top heavy really because these pens are so light, so I do find it comfortable posted. You just want to be very careful about posting these pens just because they are kind of precious in my opinion, but really, really nice to write with. So grip section, there really isn't a lot of space here on the grip section. 10.8 millimeters, and then at the narrowest, it's about 9.8. So it has a good thickness, but there just isn't, too many places for your fingers. That said, the threading is not at all sharp, so, if you hold it back here, it shouldn't irritate you, I wouldn't think. Now, in terms of the weight, this has a decent amount of ink in it. 15, not even 15, 14.5 grams. And then with the cap, 21.17 grams. So it's a very light pen. That's one of the great things about these old OMAS pens, is that they were very light. They didn't have all this metal in there. Similar to like an Aurora, the writing experience is really optimized here. It's super comfortable. Now to compare it to some other pens here it is with a Mont Blanc 149, Aurora Optima, and a Lamy Ion. So this was the big pen back, well, shouldn't say this is the big pen. This was the biggest pen size they made back in the day. And actually, if I grab one more pen here, here's another 557 size pen from the 1940s, also considered a 557. You can just see that the size really hasn't changed in all that time. Now everybody's making newer, bigger pens with the OMAS materials that, were much bigger than OMAS ever made, but basically this was the largest one at the time. For the writing sample, I'm going to be using a Paper Mind Tomoe River hardcover notebook. These notebooks are excellent with fountain pens, and for Blake's Broadcast viewers and subscribers, you can get 10% off with code BB10 at checkout. So this is the OMAS Extra Lucens with fine Extra Flessible Nib. I think that's how you spell that. And this is Parker Washable Blue. If we do some fast writing, oops. I do see a little bit of skipping in the fast writing, but that's really not how you're going to use this nib. Now, in terms of flexibility, with regular writing, you will see a small amount, not a ton, and this is even with, John Madishaw's modification to make it even more flexible and wetter. So no pressure, and then with some pressure, you do get a decent difference in the line there. And, if you're careful, you can definitely push on it to get much wider lines. I really like this nib. It's really smooth. It's very wet. Performance in normal writing is really excellent. It's not like a super flexible nib though at the end of the day. And these extra Flessible nibs, they're rare, but they're also, from what I've read from other people's experiences, they can be a little bit fussy. Now having this sent to John Madishaw, the nib is really, really nice in my opinion. But if you buy one, just know you might need to do a little bit of nib work to make it a good writer. Now, in terms of reverse writing, it's pretty scratchy. You do get a little bit of a difference in the line width, but it's not really worth the effort, I don't think. So what are my pros and cons for the OMAS Extra Lucens fountain pen with Extra Flessible Nib? Well, I think it's a beautiful pen. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful pens ever made, in my opinion. So I really love the looks of it. It's very comfortable, it's very lightweight, and it's a fantastic writer. In terms of cons, there's a few here. They stopped making these pens, so they're a little bit harder to find. I believe the retail price when these were new was around $800 or $900. These are now for sure over the $1,000 mark. And then the Extra Flessible Nib is also quite rare, so you can expect to pay probably $200 to $300 extra for that. I will say also the Extra Flessible Nib, at least mine, required some tuning, and I think a lot of other people's did as well, so just be aware of that. You might need to do a little bit of work to make it right. The threading on this particular pen is not the smoothest, which I don't love. And then being that this is celluloid and the ink comes directly in contact with the barrel, you do want to be mindful of the ink and you want to just be careful with it. You know, these pens feel delicate, which is unfortunate. It's because I really want to use them and I want to write with them all the time, but they feel a little bit delicate, a little bit more temperamental than the typical Aurora or Mont Blanc that I like to use, where those are just really, for me, the daily drivers. This doesn't quite feel like that. But that's pretty much it. Do you guys have this pen? Do you like this pen? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen paper and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and until next time.